Good afternoon. This is Matt Slonaker with Growth in Action. And I'm pleased today to have my colleague, former colleague from our EMC Bear Stearns days, Dana Dillard. And Dana, why don't we start with a little bit intro into jackfruit leadership and what you've done with your book. You've got another one coming out. Give a little bit of an intro, and then we're going to focus today's conversation around leadership and some of the best practices and what you are seeing with clients that you consult with, and we'll wrap it up from there. So, Dana?
Well, thank you for having me, Matt. I appreciate it. It's great to be here today. So my background is in leading teams in the mortgage space. That's where you and I met. So I have a couple of decades worth of leading small teams and large teams, and really loving that process. And so when I left corporate America, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And of all of the things that I've done, leading people really was the best part for me. The most satisfying part, and the part that I felt like I could have kind of a second chapter in my career with. So I've done some consulting in the leadership space and in the diversity, equity, inclusion space too. And I went back to school and got a master's degree in inclusive leadership. And based on all of that, my career, going back to school, working with clients, that's when I decided to write the book, Jackfruit Leadership, which really the essence of it is that if leaders understand the combination of uniqueness and belonging, then that's really the secret sauce to leading teams. And so I'm working on a new book, Jackfruit Leadership for Women. I have a workbook that goes with my first book to help leaders. You know, there's so much that leaders want to do. You know, I said this the other day, you know, leaders, they are not lacking for ideas. Most leaders have a list as long as their arm of things they'd like to do. But how do you get that and break it down and actually make it happen? And that's why I did the workbook, because it's very tactical. Take it chapter by chapter, really be reflective of your own skills and your team, and how to get more things done to have a better connection with the group. So that's what I'm up to these days. I'm loving that part of it. And I know you've written a book. So that's, you know, after having a corporate career, it's fun to do something totally different and to learn about a whole nother industry like self-publishing. So that's
I was going to say, that's a little plug I'll do right now too. If you enjoyed this episode, reach out to Dana or I, and we can give you the insights into self-publishing your book. We've been through it, and I was sharing with Dana years ago when Dana and I were in Dallas together working at EMC Mortgage. I don't think either one of us thought we'd be, you know, what we're doing now and writing published books and, you know, being on top sellers list yet too, Dana. So congrats again on that. So let's jump in, Dana. I appreciate the intro. Let's talk about what are the three primary qualities that you see in great leaders?
Well, I think the first one would have to be having high emotional intelligence. You know, I understand my emotions, so I can see those same emotions in others and I can connect. Because so often, I think if you think, am I a tactical leader? Am I a relational leader? And I contend you can be both. And that by being a relational leader where you really connect with people, you'll be a better tactical leader and be able to get more work done if you work on that relationship with the team. So the next piece, I would say that. And then next is being a strong communicator. And because you have to do it all the time, right? I mean, it's like every day you're with your team, with your boss, in a town hall, with a customer. And so to really understand how to communicate, how to take something big and break it down into manageable pieces, how not to wear out your boss in email or your team where they're trying to, okay, what is she trying to say here? So communication, just super critical. And then I think lastly, I like collaboration. You know, I can get stuff done myself, but when things cross over to another division, can I work cohesively with other divisions and with my partners to get things done? Or am I more in a silo where I just worry about my own stuff? And the collaborative leader certainly will be more successful.
I agree. Definitely agree. And again, that's where you and I are collaborating on a number of things. And so I love the collaboration piece. Our second question kind of goes into that self-reflection. Being in Colorado, taking hikes, I get to do a lot of that. Some of the best lessons are the mistakes that we've made when you look at your leadership journey, any regret or regrets kind of stick out to you where you've taken some hard lessons learned and turned it around?
Yeah. And I wish really, when you start out your career in your 20s, I wish someone had said, hey, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. It's not all going to be smooth, but just know that you're going to learn something from every situation that comes up. So certainly I've had the down times, and really two really stick out in my mind. One is I wish that I had left certain positions sooner. When I realized that my boss wasn't a fan and my boss was maybe not of the highest character, I should have called it. But I was a sole provider for my family, and you know how it is. People worry. You worry about income, you worry about insurance, you worry about private school, all the things. And so, but looking back, I should have bet on me. I should have said, hey, you can find something else. You could go out there and get a job where you do feel appreciated and where you do feel like that you're valued, unlike a lot of jobs that I had, unfortunately. And then the second thing was, I wish that I had not pivoted from an operational role to a support role. And for women, this happens very frequently. You're in ops, maybe you're in the call center, you're running a processing unit, and then something comes up and you get moved over to like a HR role or HR business partner or marketing or communications or some non-ops role. For me, it was government relations and community work. But when you get out of the operation, you get out of the discussion for a lot of opportunity. And I consider myself to be an operator at heart, but once you're out of that, then no one else considers you that way. So I wish that I had stayed in ops role.
Great advice. And it kind of goes back to, I think, leading into our next question. You're coaching and mentoring a lot of the younger generation coming up into leadership. And so what are some of those common mistakes that you see them making? And I'm kind of curious where that piece of it, where maybe they're, in an operation, or maybe they're in a support role, but you're trying to get them to see that, hey, look, if you really want to expand your leadership capabilities, you got to get into an operational or at least a P&L responsible position. So I'm kind of curious, what are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing?
Well, about that piece about moving into a non-ops role, I didn't really understand that until I read one of the Lean In reports, one of the McKinsey reports, where it talked about why there's so few women CEOs in financial services. And that's why. That's one of the big reasons. Some of it is because women get fed up and don't want the hassle and don't want the responsibility and just feel like that's not for them. But another part is that they get moved out of an operational role and are no longer considered for P&L positions. And so I didn't really connect that at the time, but now looking back, I think that's exactly what happens. So, but as far as new leaders, things that I see that I think, oh gosh, I don't know, or maybe a bell should be going off. First is, I think new leaders sometimes can go in with a bit of hubris and a bit of overconfidence. And instead of approaching it like I know everything, that they were more humble, and that they would just know that they don't have to have all the answers. None of us have all the answers. The people who are doing the work all day, every day, those are the people with the answers. And I can remember several times, in fact, I was writing about this yesterday, where I would get a new department. And like I remember one time I was the customer service person, and they called to say, hey, we want you to run collections. And I can remember thinking, I'm the inbound happy talk with the customer. Collections, outbound dialer, trying to collect dollars. I didn't know anything about that. But I sat down and I met with everybody in the team. And then before long, I had a 10-page list of things and problems that people gave to me. This needs to be worked out. This needs to be solved. So as a leader, you don't have to know everything. Just be open and listen and use all the knowledge of everybody in a collaborative style. I think that is a big piece of it. I don't know. What do you think? What do you see that you wish new leaders didn't do?
I think you touched on it. The first thing, just looking at my own journey, when I first stepped into managing a team, I was like in my middle 20s. And so I was like the top REO asset manager. I was making more than the CEO of the company because I was getting variable commissions on every asset I sold. So, I thought my crap didn't stink. And I thought everybody, when I stepped into the leadership role, that everybody had to think like me, act like me, be like me. And I learned the hard way. I spent a lot of time in HR, getting counseled and written up, and having, there was some discussion that they were going to take me out of the role. And so obviously I was fortunate to renegotiate that and step back in. But I think that's the big piece, is especially in your 20s. If you're stepping into leadership and you're in your 30s or even 40s for that matter, or maybe even 50s, right? You've been through that, and the wisdom. You've seen good leaders, you've seen bad leaders. But when you're in that age, you haven't really seen a lot of bad. Maybe you had some good leaders. Fortunately for me, I had the military, so I had some good leadership, but it was still very authoritative and directive driven, right? Coming from the military. So I kind of thought that was my style. So that was probably the biggest lesson. I think the second piece you touched on is, even when you go in and you have a change edict from the top, i.e. your boss telling you, Dana, you got to change this, and I want this XYZ in the next 3 months. You've got to distance yourself from that on how you communicate with your peers and your team, and ask a lot of questions. Don't tarnish the past leadership. Never say anything bad about it. Talk about more of the positive and where we're going. And so I think those are some of the key lessons that younger leaders need to get on board with. And it's ironic that your statements resonate with me, because I did that. I thought everybody had to be like me, speak like me. And like I said, I spent a lot of time in HR.
Well, I can remember being in that same boat in my 20s, and I would go to Barnes and Noble and stand in the business book sections, and I would pull books out and read it, and then I would think, okay, that's what I think. That's right. And then I pull it. Okay, that's how I do it. That's it. I could look for affirmation, because I was not getting any in my day job, and I was just kind of winging it and hoping I was doing the right thing. So I think that's one of it. And then to circle back to the book and what it's about, I just want to, because I think it will resonate with everyone. So uniqueness and belonging. And there's a lot of research behind this. It's not just the world according to Dana, but the idea is that every person has something unique about them, and they want to feel valued and appreciated for that. So if a leader can think about their team and think, what's unique and special about everybody on the team, and how can I expose that? How can I shine a hot, bright light on their talents? That makes people feel connected. That makes people feel like they belong. And that's the second piece, belonging. I don't want to just fit in. I want to be able to be myself. And I can do that when you see me, when you see my gifts, when you see my talents, when you support me and you're my biggest cheerleader. So that piece of understanding uniqueness and belonging really resonated with me, because I just think, yeah, that's it. Everyone feels like, I'm good at this. Why can't they see that? And how many bosses have you had that, checking the box, just show me your reports. If you didn't get your number of widgets or calls handled or collection calls made or whatever, you get the frowny face. It's so much more complicated than that. So that would be my second thing. And then third, I would say you need a strategy to communicate your achievements to your boss and to the influencers. And the influencers I would define as, who does your boss listen to? And you want to be able to think about the influencers and who's a friend, like who would support you in a meeting if you weren't there, who is a foe who really didn't care for you, and that they would dog on you in a meeting if you weren't there. And then who's in the middle? Who are the people who just don't know enough about what you do to support you either way? And you need to have a strategy around that, especially, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, but especially the further up you go, you need a strategy. And for a time in your career, you can just work hard and your numbers will show that and you'll get promoted. But the further up you go, that's just not enough, because people will be like, yeah, I don't even know what she does over there. What does she do? That kind of thing. So you constantly have to be able to show your worth, show your value, show your accomplishments, and have other people talk to your boss about those same things.
I think to reinforce the message here on this, and I think you would agree with this. I think as you step into, say, the VP level and above, your number one team, candidly, and I think Patrick Lucioni says this, 5 dysfunctions of a team, all of his leadership books. Your number one team is not your team. It's really your peers.
Right.
The
horizontal team, the horizontal.
Yep. And I think, especially in larger organizations, because this is when those relationships, for IT, for example, if you have a positive relationship with the CIO or the CTO and you're in ops, you're going to be able to get some self projects, resource time. Those things typically are going to come your way, versus if it's an adversarial type of relationship and you're always kind of taking shots because somebody else is taking the shot at IT and how they're not addressing help tickets in time or whatever it may be. Guess what? You pretty much are never going to get that above and beyond from the CIO, the CTO, and the leadership ranks. When maybe you have a new hire and they're not getting their laptop, they're not going to go out of their way to find one, right? Allocate. So I think that number one team approach, when you hit that VP level, and it really needs to be that first, and then your boss, and then your team. And I think some leaders get kind of stymied by that. They're kind of like, no. It's got to be my team first and my boss, or sometimes they'll say my boss. Well, you and I know this. Bosses move around a lot too. And if you put all your energy into nurturing that boss relationship, guess what? They retire, they get promoted, they move, whatever. Then all of a sudden, everybody else is sitting there saying, okay, now Dana's vulnerable. Her protector is gone, right? And so I would encourage leaders, when they get to that front line executive level, really nurture that peer relationship at least as much as you're nurturing the boss relationship, if not even more.
Yeah, and I think the reason people don't do it, and I'm speaking for Dana here, I don't think I was very good at this. And the reason why was because they were mean. My peer group, I felt many times, was not looking out for my best interests. And despite, me seeking their opinion or me trying to partner on things, a lot of times you just got the stiff arm. So it's too bad. It's too bad. Now, that was the signal that was not the right spice for me. So again, when you don't work for someone of character and your peer group is not responsive to any sort of collaboration, maybe it's time to pick up your marbles and go somewhere else. So, but I think that's important. It's very important. If you want to sustain and you want to continue to grow, you have to have those cheerleaders who are supporting you for sure.
Let's talk about motivation. How are you seeing leaders, especially with the remote, the last couple of years really being a big play, and you're not having that going out to lunch or grabbing coffee, stopping by their office and having those types of 10, 15, 20-minute conversations we used to have? How are leaders staying motivated, especially, again, if they are getting beat? What are some of the secrets or the tips that you would have for them?
Well, I think first you have to do soul searching. And this goes for when you're feeling down, you're just unmotivated. And then sometimes you're feeling disappointed. Maybe you didn't get a promotion that you thought you should get, or somebody did get promoted that you think, have they never talked to that guy? How could that guy get that promotion? So all those things can have such an impact on you. And to me, it's time for a hard look in the mirror. So what motivates me? Everybody's motivated by something different. There's two kinds of motivation: intrinsic things inside, like pride, challenging things, fun, your emotions, how you feel about the work. And then the extrinsic things like, degrees or money, or a boss that's going to yell at you if you don't get something done. That can be a motivator. So you have to think, what motivates me? And how can I do a reset and re-challenge myself? I think the reset's really important. And that is a change in routine. That's taking a new class. That's volunteering for something at the office you've never done before. That's really resetting. So this motivates me. I know that about myself because I have high EQ. I've really worked on understanding myself. And I know that I can reset and get my mojo back. But it can be challenging, especially remotely. And the one thing that I think really serves people well, if they have a personal advisory team. So these are people that you've worked with over your career that understand what you do for a living, but you don't work for them now, not in your current place. And people that you can go to, maybe you have someone who's more of a coach. You have someone who can help you when you have problems or conflicts. You have somebody who's more like a recruiter type, who helps you understand the marketplace and your value in it. But having people in this personal advisory team that you can go to therapeutically and work through all the disappointment. It's hard to do that with someone you work with. You don't want to put all your eggs out there, but with your own personal advisory team where people are pulling for you, you need that group to get over the slump and get back on top of the hill. I don't know what you do when you're having a rough time now.
No, I'm with you. And I think this is where, like, you and I, through the years, have continued to stay in contact and bounce just like we are. We're both in the consulting, self-employed space. You've been in it for 4 years. I've been on it for 4.5. And so without colleagues like yourself, I probably would have had a tougher time if it wasn't for the feedback sessions that you and I've had. And I'll plug out, one of my mentors all these years being in this industry, and he's always been there for me. Whether it's just giving advice or even like giving opportunities. John Vella is somebody I think a lot of, and is, you and I, we would say this, the quality versus the quantity. I may have thousands of people that follow me on LinkedIn and so forth, but I can really count on one hand those people that have been there. And if I say, hey, I need some help, I need you to listen to me on XYZ, give them some advice. Tony Miola is another one. Vic Pepe, some of these names I'm mentioning are people that you and I work with, and they've been there for me since I started my practice. So any call outs for you that you want to respect?
Well, I have a group externally that I've worked with at various different places, and my friend Debbie is one. And I just feel like Debbie's like my hype team. It's not when I'm feeling down, when I feel like I'm about had it with this, she always helps me see the good. And then my friend Cherie that I worked with at Mr. Cooper, she and I worked very closely together there, and we've stayed in touch. And again, both of us going through career changes and figuring out what's good. And we both can pump each other up and give each other insight because we know each other's strengths and what people are good at. So, I think that having lunch with people you used to work with or former colleagues, I think that's a big motivator too, because it gets your mind off the day-to-day, you reconnect with someone, your energy gets higher, and then you can come back and face it. Sometimes, don't you think we can get down about stuff, and sometimes we just need a sandwich?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
people don't get too down about it, because careers are hard. I mean, careers are hard, and nobody cares about your career the way you do. It's on you. And sometimes you hit a rough patch, but you're going to get through it.
There's a saying there, and this is the military side of me that comes out there, suck it up, buttercup. So like when I feel like, oh, sorry for myself and so forth, we're human. You're going to have those. It's like, look yourself in the mirror, suck it up, buttercup. To your point, not even your family can help you out of this. It's like, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. You've got to grow. You've got to hustle. You've got to do those things. And so I'm with you on that. Let's kind of talk about, there were two questions I gave you. And the first one was, and this doesn't have to be in our industry, but most of the people probably listening to this are going to be in our industry. So try to name one or two maybe that are in our industry. Who's doing leadership development good? Maybe not great per se, but like, who's doing it good? Who does a great onboarding? Who's actually developing leaders? Give me a sense of, anybody out there that, you'd like to compliment them on their leadership onboarding and development.
Well, it's hard because I think, as we know, mortgage is going through a tough season, and all too often those types of things you just talked about kind of get put on the back burner when the purse strings get tight. But the things I love, I can talk about some companies maybe externally that can provide that I've seen pieces in the mortgage business, but a company like Spotify, they call it their greenhouse approach to growing leaders. They invest in them, they fertilize them, they provide water and encouragement, and they're focused on growth. I mean, they have a growth mindset. The other thing I see other companies doing is having like a mastermind circle or a career circle where you're paired with other people at your level and you can bond, share things, support each other. That doesn't happen naturally at most companies, like where you naturally sit down with 8 of your peers and y'all would openly share what's going well and what your challenges are. But for companies to orchestrate that seems so simple to me, and why companies don't do it. In a lot of cases, they don't even have like a leader in part of that group. It's just the group itself, the peer group. But one thing I liked about Spotify that I thought, oh, why don't more people do this, is that in each of their squads, is what they call them instead of teams, the squad decides who the leader is over the work, but they're provided with a coach who is there solely to coach and mentor. And I thought, boy, how many times when you're in a hospital wouldn't you have loved to have had a coach who was your partner? You're trying to get the work done, trying to get the calls out, trying to get the letters out, whatever the task is, but to have someone whose whole job is to mentor and coach the people on the team so that they feel heard and seen and problem solved very quickly. So those are the qualities that I like. The other piece is having a real commitment to learning, and not just like when I hit a new manager mark or when I'm brand new, but just constantly available, constantly investing and growing people, especially I think with the younger generation. Lots of times they don't want to lead people, but they want to grow and they want, to have new experiences and see new parts of the company. So that's a piece I think, again, companies just miss out on, and they let good talent get bored, disinterested, and leave, rather than saying, hey, what are you interested in at the company that you don't know about? Let me open that door. Let me make that introduction. Let's let you spend a day a week in that department, that sort of thing. So I don't know, what about you? Do you see any out there that you find inspiring?
Well, I would say at executive level, an organization you and I were briefly part of through the acquisition of VMC Bear through Chase, but you and I know Peter Marungi, for example, who's the CEO of Chase Aldo, and looking where Peter was back in the day to where he is now in a major bank, only a level in between him and Jamie Dimon, right, who's probably the most respected leader in our industry. I think Chase does a very good job, especially in their rotation of their leadership team. They are probably the best at rotating. And how many people have you seen be named successors to Jamie Dimon? But because Dimon was young, still there, they eventually left and they got a CEO job at another top institution, right? There's probably 10, 15, 20 different CEOs out there in the industry because they worked for Jamie Dimon. And so I think they do a good job, at least at the executive level, putting their execs in different roles every, say, 2 years. Yeah. They also do a pretty good job of investing in them going out and looking at other industry segments. I ran into Peter one time in the airport, and he was out in Napa or Silicon Valley looking at companies that were basically doing things with AI. And this was years ago, before AI became the big thing. And now it makes sense because you look at what Chase is throwing into AI investments, and they're probably the leader in our industry with that investment. So I would say executive wise, Chase would be an organization I would look hard at if I was the executive, and look at how they enhance your skills. That's one that jumps out.
Yeah, and not afraid to play the long game with leaders, right? Because they'll take, like you said, a couple-year project here to groom you and move you around. So, yeah, I just think that there's so many basic things that companies could do that they get so short-sighted, where it's like, we don't have the money for that, we don't have the, and it's like, what how can you afford to let your talent walk out because they're bored and under challenged versus investing in them and giving them that opportunity? So we definitely could improve, I think, in our industry, and it's not that hard. It's not that hard.
It's not that hard. And I think this is where services like you coming in, partnering with the business leaders in HR, Dana and Jackfruit Leadership can help you guys with that. My last question of you, and this is so key. I think about Billions, the show. Have you ever watched that?
No.
It's on Showtime, Billions. Look it up. And there's a performance coach there for the traders. It's a hedge fund. And her name is Wendy. And she basically is known for getting even the CEO of Axe Capital his name's Axe, getting him to be on the top of his game, right? And being in sales, I think it's so key. It's one of the things that I see lacking in sales teams. There is no performance coaching. There's management telling them to input stuff in the CRM and they have to do X amount of activity, but mindset. So I'm kind of curious, what are you coaching in some best practice, maybe? How are you addressing the mindset in leaders?
Well, I think the first thing is to have that determination that I can do it. I can do anything. I can learn anything. I can go wherever I want to go. The question is, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And I think as someone, both of us owning our own businesses and trying to build something from scratch, in my mind, it's not over till I say it's over. I haven't finished until I say I'm finished. And I'm not afraid to try new things. I'm not afraid to try to go back to school. I'm not afraid to write a book. I'm not afraid to start online classes. It may take me a longer, if I've never done it before, but I'm not afraid to try new things. And I think that piece, that confidence, that innovation, that pushing yourself can really make a difference, I think, for employees. Because so how many times have we seen people who are just really burned out, and who, don't have a creative idea because they've probably been shot down too much, or they're just tired in general. So I think that piece of it, that investing, encouraging, and providing that confidence that, you can do anything. And then I think the other part about, coaching, we were talking about daily habits and things that you can do. I just think that you have to be disciplined about it. You have to have a calendar that's manageable. You have to have a to-do list that's manageable. I mean, I end every day with looking at my calendar for tomorrow, looking at my to-do list, and plugging in my task as meetings for the next day. So wherever I have an opening, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to work on this here, I'm going to work on that there, so that I approach it in a let's get it done kind of perspective. Because it's easy for a time to get away from you. Like, I have a couple of free hours, I'll catch up on my social media, or I'll go out there and see what the news is, versus, okay, I have my to-do list, let's go. So I think that piece of it, I can do it. I want to be efficient. I can get things done. And then lastly, I would say, on the coaching side, you have to have thick skin and you have to be resilient, because things will not always go your way. And you have to know that going in. There are going to be people who get promoted that you don't agree with. There's going to be people that you think were your allies who won't be. There are going to be people on your team that you think are happy and content, and they're not. And they're not really a supporter of you. So knowing that you're making good decisions that align with your values and your approach, and that you're staying true to yourself, goes a long way when the chips are down, which they will be. Leadership is not a popularity contest, as we know. So you really have to be fortified from within, and to know that I'm a hard worker, I'm smart, I have the company's best interest at heart. I want to do whatever it takes to meet the goal. And sometimes that won't be good enough for people, but you know that it is.
Yeah, that's so true, Dana. And I think, I thank you for your insights in today's session. And I like to always end with maybe a takeaway or a key action. So, this wasn't one of the things we discussed as prep, but what comes to mind is there, with 2025 coming up, is there a key action or takeaway from today's topic you want them to take?
I would encourage, who told me this was Peter. Now that I'm saying that, Peter Morangi told me this, that every year he wants it to be known as the year he did X. Like every year he wants it to be something. The year I went back to school, the year that I started online classes, the year that I wrote my book. So I would encourage people to really think about that big thing. What's that big thing you want to do next year? And really start thinking, how do I get there? And like Matt said, we never would have thought that we would be authors, and we are. I think everybody has a story, and that everybody could write a book if they wanted to. So really the possibilities are endless. So that's what I would say. Is what do you really want to get accomplished next year, and make it happen? That's a great action. It's something I'm going to take away for myself. And so I can't even think of a better one than that. Let's leave them with that. And again, this is Matt Slonaker with Dana Dillard. Thank you for joining us today on Growth in Action. And we will be sharing this
by all means, when I put this out there, I'll have Dana tagged on LinkedIn. Please reach out to her, Jackfruit Leadership. There is a workbook that she just has out. And please, hopefully you can see she's very passionate about this topic and helping groom the future leaders in our financial industry and other industries. So Dana, again, thank you for your time. And thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.